Hello again, Steve here, and today I wanted to share with you a few books that I'm reading, and I haven't finished them, obviously, just having a quick look at them, but they both sound intriguing. One I had heard about before, the other I had never heard about. The first one is called, I think it's called Plato's Republic, and from what I'm seeing so far, it's basically a group of guys way back in Athens somewhere chatting about things, and it seems like there's Socrates in there, and he seems to ask a lot of questions. He doesn't claim to know anything. And what was interesting, there's a few other things that are interesting, but the one thing that was really interesting, and how things don't really change, do they? There was this really smart guy who was very well educated. I wish I knew his name right off the top of my head right now, but I don't. Anyways, he started getting angry at Socrates because Socrates was only asking questions, and yet this guy, he said that, basically I know things, so I admit to knowing things, but you don't, kind of thing. And he started getting really angry. And he sounded a bit like a modern day professor or something who seems to profess to know everything and gets really angry if you don't give him the right answer. That was really interesting. So that's Plato's Republic. Maybe somebody here has got a comment on that. And yeah, so it's some insight into the mind of Socrates, which is very interesting. The second one that I wanted to share with you is called, I believe it's called Infiltration, by a guy named Taylor Marshall. Now, how I came across this book is I had heard of Taylor Marshall before because he came up in some of my feeds and what have you in related topics. He is a Catholic intellectual. He's got I think a college called the New Thomas Aquinas Institute or something like that. And it's funny because there was a big snowstorm. I don't know if you can see here, but there's a snowdrift right beside me. The snow is about, 12 feet deep in places here right now, and it's raining, but it's gotten mild. But anyways, it was a snowstorm, so I was working with this guy who had his truck stuck, and we started talking one thing, this and that and what have you, and all of a sudden, you know how it is when two red-pilled people meet? All of a sudden it's like, whoa, there's something is said and it's like a click going on, right? And we started talking there in the snowstorm, and the next day he brought me this book by Taylor Marshall, because I had made the comment, and I had something about the Pope came up in our conversation or what have you, and his eyes went like, whoa, and because I've always had this suspicion that the Pope, the current Pope Francis who's there, is there because of a coup inside the Catholic Church, and I didn't have any evidence for that, but I mean, let's face it, the comment was made that the previous guy was getting too old and whatever, Benedict. Heck, Pope John Paul, not to slant the guy or whatever, but he had drool coming out of his mouth and he was in a wheelchair and stuff like that and basically couldn't talk. But somehow he wasn't too old to resign. But Benedict, they shut the money supply off to him and what have you. But anyways, there's a couple of chapters in this book, Infiltration, about the whole process of how Francis came to be. And let me tell you, as soon as I read the name Aleister Crowley, I was blown away. Apparently there was a cadre of cardinals who for years were trying to infiltrate the Catholic Church and overthrow to more of a communistic church or whatever. And they used to meet in this village of a bunch of Aleister Crowleyites. And that was just weird, man. That was weird. It leads me to believe more and more and more that my initial hunch, my spidey sense, was correct. That this was an inside job. This was an overthrow. Benedict was forced out, I suspect. And you can see the rumblings of discontent in younger guys like this guy, Taylor Marshall, who's talking about how, who was it? Is it Sheen? Fulton Sheen. Cardinal Fulton Sheen. The current Pope is sort of vetoing his beatification. This guy was a theologian par excellence who went around the world talking about the graces of the Catholic Church or whatever it is. Of course, it's only going to be a Catholic, generally a Catholic cardinal or nun or whatever, who's going to be a saint these days. But typically, if there's a fair bunch of evidence and a whole bunch of Catholics want him to be, like Mother Teresa and Pope John Paul II and what have you, it's sort of a sleigh ride, right, to sainthood. But Fulton Sheen, he was against a lot of the things, and he was probably one of the agitators against this communist cadre of Aleister Crowleyites within the church. And he pointed them out, like he was an ardent anti-communist, right? And yet Pope Francis, from what I can see, is a communist, or very close to a communist sympathizer anyway. What did I see him in the other day? He was sitting in a circus, right in the middle of a circus, and basically had women with like G-strings on and stuff bending over in front of him and what have you. Like with like tights and whatever, not just like G-strings, but it was bizarre as all hell. I don't know what's with this guy. I still don't know. The jury is out in my mind for sure, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist in that I go around saying this is what happened, but I gotta say my suspicions are there. So anyways, that's the two books that I'm interested in at the moment. Platos Republic and Infiltration by Taylor Marshall. Talk again soon. Bye for now.